definitely some lessons learned in there, and mistakes that, are anybody listening to this is probably going to get a few laughs and say, man, these guys were kind of idiots. But we eventually figured it out 10 years later, maybe.
Websites, and that's why we developed Bakerfi, and we saw it change the game for us. But it wasn't the first thing that we tackled as a business.
And then the other thing that you said at the end there, pick up the phone and call them, and see if they answer the phone, because that's what's going to happen when a buyer calls on one of your listings.
What's up, Mike? How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. What do you want to talk about today?
I want to kind of dive a little deeper with you on Dispo marketing, sales, marketing to sell your properties. I feel like uh, you've spent a lot of time learning and figuring out how we can test different channels, different strategies within marketing, selling our properties effectively. And I think that that's something that a lot of people struggle with, because there's so many different options that you can choose from.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we spent a long time in the smaller sub $25,000 category, and we were doing a lot of seller financing. So that's really where I think we, like figured it out. And it's funny because in the higher value properties, when we started doing those, it was primarily go to realtors, and then we sort of did this hybrid approach. So maybe we start with just the low balance ones, the sub 25K where we're selling through the site, talk about that first, and then maybe start talking about the bigger deals, and how the power of the MLS and the power of a realtor can really really help with those. How's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Let's do it, man. So
All right.
where do we even start? I mean, with the smaller deals, there's so many different channels to choose from, and man, again, going back through a lot of horror stories. I mean, do you remember when we were initially just relying on like Craigslist? We tried eBay, we tried Facebook Marketplace, we got kicked off Facebook Marketplace. We were going into Facebook groups, we were doing paid. I mean, man, all right, let's go back to the beginning. Where did we
Well, we started with what I think a lot of people should probably start with, and it's, how can you do this for free for the most part, which is, at the time, we're going to rewind back long ways when Craigslist, I think, was a more viable marketing channel than it was, or than it is today. I think, most of the traffic has probably gone over to Facebook Marketplace. We maybe caught the tail end of eBay. I know we did a little bit on there. I don't know if we even got a full sale off eBay. I just know that we were testing it.
I don't think we did.
Yeah, and so then times started to change. Craigslist started to be less of a viable channel for us, and we started moving over to Facebook ourselves. And we did Facebook buy sell groups and Facebook Marketplace, and we created all sorts of, we had a bunch of profiles on Facebook, and we had to get ultimately 10 mini PCs or something like that, and VPNs, so folks that were overseas could post in the US, and all that stuff. So we can unhash that and then kind of talk about where we finally wound up, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely some lessons learned in there, and mistakes that, are anybody listening to this is probably going to get a few laughs and say, man, these guys were kind of idiots. But I mean, we eventually figured it out 10 years later, maybe.
Oh, we're total idiots. That's why we're sitting here talking right now. So, back when we first started, Craigslist was still, and I actually, I don't know, it might still be out there today, but it was still pretty much a viable option. A lot of people were buying and selling land on Craigslist. So it was totally a good channel that you could utilize for free. But, and anything that's like this channel, I would say go for it at the beginning when you just have a few properties. It's only when you need to start selling more properties and you've got a little bit more bandwidth, maybe some support, you can do other channels. But for us, yeah, we started on Craigslist. We bought some properties, we posted them on Craigslist, and it's like anything. If you're consistent, I think you're going to start to get results. So it's not like you post your property on Craigslist and you just start getting leads. It's post every single day, and then some of your posts get taken down, and obviously as your posts get buried by a new post. You have to go back and you either repost them or post new, right? And I think the same rules apply to Facebook, which I know a lot of people are on now doing Facebook Marketplace. But Craigslist was great for us. We use those rules where just wake up, post, try to get your post up to the top, and when we could, we were trying to post, multiple times a day or repost. And I remember we built like a little system to go in, and not software, but just a way to say, okay, like I posted this one, check the box. And, then there were some that you could repost for a little while. And it worked, and it worked for a while. I think the thing was, it wasn't scalable to the point that we really wanted it to be. It wasn't like spend an hour on it and get, a certain return on. I mean, it's not ROAS, but I guess it kind of could be if you put a time or put a dollar amount on your time. But anyway, so we did it and it worked, and we were able to get sales, and we were able to slowly build a note portfolio. So that was good. Then maybe 2015, something like that, 2016, we started to go into Facebook, and I don't even remember Marketplace. It was probably around, maybe we started there, but I feel like we were heavy in the Facebook buy sell groups.
Yep. Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when we started to do the Facebook buy sell groups and, start posting our properties there. But as we continually started to get kind of beat up by like Facebook and Craigslist for trying to post more, we were dealing with getting either kicked off the platform or somehow like throttled, or our post would go. I remember I definitely on Craigslist, it might have been happening on Facebook too. We'd do a post and we wouldn't know it, but it would just get not taken down, but it would not be visible, and I can't remember what that was called.
It was like ghosted.
Yeah, it was like ghosted, but not the same meaning that it has today. So yeah, we'd get ghosted back then. And yeah, so that was a tough hurdle to pass over. Eventually though, someone said something that made a lot of sense, and it was like, look, I mean, you need to know that if you're going to put $1 in, you're going to get $2 out, or whatever it is that you're going to want to, spend on your ads. Like, you're going to need to know that you're going to get a return on that, and it's got to be scalable. And so that was one thing that really, I think, resonated with us. We were like, okay, we got to build something that's going to be scalable and repeatable so we can count on it. And then the other thing was, where is the high quality traffic? So, I distinctly remember when Facebook was really cheap to run cold traffic, we could get a lead for pennies. I mean, I think it was just a few cents we'd get a lead. And then the lead was terrible. Like, I mean, we literally got 998 leads one month for some really low cost. And then at the same month though, we tested Google for cold traffic, where you had to do all of the keywords. And, the cost per lead in Facebook was like 2 cents or whatever it was. And the cost per lead from Google was $30. But we got 30 leads from Google, and we closed like 7 of them or something like that, or 8. I don't know. It was a really high number compared to how many leads we actually got off Google. And we closed 1 out of 1,000 of those Facebook leads. And our sales team was completely exhausted. Like, they had so many leads that were so terrible that were just tire kickers, because it was just interruption marketing on Facebook. We tried our hardest to build the right audience. And this was back when you could really target on Facebook. You can't really do that as well anymore. You could hyper target back then. They've put all these limitations on it now. But anyway, long story short, like, yeah, our salespeople were just exhausted, because if you think about it, in Facebook, a lot of folks are going onto Facebook because they want a distraction, or they want to see their friends, or they want to chat with someone, right? They're not there shopping for land. They didn't go to Facebook and, necessarily like think, I'm just shopping for land. Maybe, but probably not. And then we interrupt them with some flashy ad that gets them to click on it. It's basically almost, clickbait, but not quite. And then they go to our site, or they want to chat with us on Facebook. And man, what a huge time waster it was to get one sale. Whereas Google, if you think about it, those people that are typing in those keywords, they're high intent right off the bat, right? So we found that we just completely stopped using Facebook for cold traffic. And at least for a long while we did. And then we would use Google for cold traffic to get people to the site. And then we would just do retargeting on Facebook. And that was it. That's kind of how we allocated the budget. Um,
Yeah.
the
Sorry, you said something though a little bit ago, and I think it's really important to repeat. And this is a mantra that I think in entrepreneurship is said all the time, right? But at the beginning, we were very hands-on and we did things that were not scalable, and we knew that they were not going to be scalable, but we had to generate some revenue, we had to generate some traction, and we had to test out a lot of different things, right? And so we got to those breaking points. It probably took us a little bit longer to get to the breaking points because we were just willing to suffer, and then we had a sales team. We made them suffer probably far too long, but I think that that's a really important piece just to emphasize, is that at the beginning, you got to be scrappy. You got to go and do things that are not going to be scalable. You got to be high touch, a lot of outreach, very personal, and you got to see what works. And then through that process, you kind of develop your tone and your messaging and your style, and you see which audience that resonates with. And then you can kind of focus in on that further as you decide which channels to go to scale with, because then that authenticity really does shine through, right? And there is an audience out there for all different types. There's all these different profiles and buyer personas and audiences that are looking for people that they resonate with. And so don't be afraid to do those things that are a little bit more high touch, hands on in the first place, and then graduate over into testing things that are definitely scalable.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you stopped there for that, because it is important. We talk about that, even now as we're developing software, is like you have to do things that are not scalable at first and sort of learn along the way. Plus, it's just a matter of what do you have when it comes to resources. If we started out and we had a ton of money doing this, then maybe we would have just jumped straight to all of the premium listings on land.com. But didn't have that, right? So we used our time instead, and we'd spend our time on Craigslist and Facebook doing all that stuff. I think where we really probably made a mistake was trying to scale them, realizing, okay, they're not scalable, and then let's try to scale them. Let's go through and like do the mini PC thing and the VPN and all that stuff that we were doing. It was insane. We had like multiple like little mini computers at our house, my house, your house, a few of our team members' houses that were here in the US. It was just like, okay, we're trying to scale something that's not really scalable.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? And so recognizing that, where once you kind of hit that breaking point, don't force it. There are other channels out there that definitely are scalable. They may cost a little bit more time, and you have to go in and you have to learn that channel and figure out how you best utilize it. But at the same time, don't force the scale to a platform that doesn't lend itself to doing that.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And we're kind of riffing here on this, but like I'm super passionate about this. I want to do, some sort of masterclass on how, you could do it one way versus the other. Like if you have a budget for it, then maybe go this route, or depending on how much inventory you have, go one route. But if you don't and you're just starting, go a different route. So, but that is kind of the route if you're just starting, is go the scrappy path and find the channels that you don't have to go spend money on right off the bat. And then once you're growing a little bit and you want to probably scale a little bit more, or let's say that you're starting the land business on the side and you've got a solid W2 income coming in, but you don't have time, you have less time than you do maybe money, then maybe go to one of the channels that's paid, but it gets really good results. And forget the PPC that you're going to be able to layer on with Google and Facebook. Like that's not where you start. I kind of jumped ahead, but really I think the best channels when you're going to start putting real dollars behind your marketing are going to be the land marketplaces. So land.com, which covers a bunch of them under that umbrella, but land.com, that's the most expensive, but it's probably the highest quality leads. So if you've got a killer job or you're just starting off the business with a bunch of money, just start there. You're going to do the least work and you're going to get the best results pretty much, but it is expensive. You're going to pay to play there. The next two, which are kind of, I think, pretty even these days, are land flip and land search. Those are both good marketplaces, good leads. And, they're expensive, but nowhere near what you're going to spend on land.com. And then, so kind of maximize whatever channel you're going to start there with the land marketplaces. Go maximize that first, right? So if it's land flip, let's say you start there and you're going to spend $100 a month on land flip, or maybe 200, then try to also maybe buy some of the slots that are located where you have a bunch of inventory. If you've got a bunch of inventory in, some county, like maybe try to buy the page for that county and spend whatever it is to get that page. I forget what their algorithm is, but you can basically like bid on it and get that page. And so anyway, yeah, I think I'd start there with the marketplaces. And once you really maximize those, then the next spot to go to when you're going to start spending money is going to be Google traffic, Google paid ads and Facebook or Meta paid. And yeah, then you can actually start like measuring your return on ad spend.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the other important pieces that we learned along the way was, as you mentioned this earlier, where it's just be consistent, right? Where you want to just continue to make sure that you're posting on a consistent basis and that you're following up and you are making sure that you're utilizing or maximizing that channel to the most that you can. And by doing that, once you kind of develop that mastery of that channel and then you expand to whatever the next channel is that you want to go to, they very much complement each other, because these marketplaces, people, once they start to get into the space where they're like, man, I actually think it would be great to buy some land. I'm going to go, and where do I start? Maybe I start here. And they came across an ad somehow of yours on one of those marketplaces. And maybe they didn't convert right then and there. But then as you're starting to expand and look at some of these other channels, or the retargeting, which you could start to, maybe this is a segue into that. It's very complimentary, right? And that's where people start to recognize you for your brand, your personality, all of those things that might resonate with them. They become familiar, they establish some trust, and then that's when they get a little bit more confident and comfortable to actually contact you and hopefully purchase a property.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this is stuff that you can build up over time, right? You want to build an online presence, and ultimately you want to, if you have more than a handful of properties, it's nice to have a website. And so many people out there, especially now, they're shopping around so much online. Like in 2026, it's obviously way different than it was 10 years ago, but it's just so much more normal for people to shop online. And your website's a great place to let them get to know you, express who you are as a company, put yourself on there as, one of the founders of the company, and then talk about your story. Some folks, I like it when they've got a story attached to it, like it's not a generic, we decided that, it wasn't easy enough for the general population to buy land or whatever it is. Like that's the generic version of it that you see. And then there's other folks that actually do like a really good story, or they have a picture of, themselves with their family, and they're talking about it from a more personal vantage point. And I think the customer just gets to know you a lot better that way.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think having that web presence, and it's so easy now to set that up. Obviously that's one of the things that we try to offer and help people with. And but man, that goes so far with just introducing yourself in the way that you want to introduce yourself to them. You can have control over the branding, the style, the coloring, all of that, without you having to have any dialogue or conversation with them one on one. And then they've already got a sense of who you are, what your personality is, before they even contact you. And it just removes so much of that friction early on, where you equate it to like dating, right? Like you sit across the table from somebody, and you got to hear their whole life story. Well, man, if I go to the website and I'm able to read your story as to why you got into the business and all these people that you've helped and why you're looking at properties in these certain areas, uh, great. Like, we're already beyond that. Let's move on. Let's talk about the next steps and maybe see if this is actually a really good fit, and let's find the right property.
Yeah, what size is the diamond you're going to put on this ring? Yeah, no, totally. And you know, you said something too that's really key is you want to have, like, you could call it the same scent, you know, but like when someone's following the scent as they're tracking down something, like it doesn't shift. So, you know, if they see you on, let's say, Land Watch, and then they jump over to Land Search and you're there too, your marketing looks the same. The image, the picture of yourself on your profile picture, it's the same picture, you know. And then when they get to your website, it's also the same. It's like you have to create that synergy between when you're on a third party marketplace like Landwatch or Land Flipper, Land Search, one of those, like when they get to your site, it feels familiar, you know, and they're getting to know you all the way through that whole customer journey, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's a key thing too, is going back to like the, you know, you're going to be messing around with stuff that might be not that scalable at the beginning, and maybe you don't have an opportunity to inject much branding if you're posting on Facebook Marketplace, you know. But when you get to these paid platforms, and especially as you move towards the, you know, going into Google and Meta with the paid ads, like you can really create a lot of brand awareness at the same time, so that they're familiar with your face, they're familiar with your color scheme, you know, they see your logo, they see your tagline, all that stuff. And it really all just, it adds up. And by the time they're really in that mode to go buy something, you know, if you have the right property, they're going to buy from you.
So what would you say would be, let's go, let's start with the people who are just getting into the business, right? So if you're just getting into the business and they're going to pick a channel, what are some of the other things that they can do to really complement that singular approach, that kind of add to the overall marketing effort in telling the story and developing the relationship overall?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just getting in the business, like you don't even need a website at that stage. It's not, it's a nice to have. It's not a need to have. It's like, let's just get a deal or maybe 3 to 5 deals under our belt, and then keep moving from there, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't start injecting your personality into those ads. So I see some ads out there that are like super dry, and you know that might speak to people. It's just, it's very, I don't know, planned. And you know, very short sometimes. And then there's some that are really, really long and they're almost too colorful. Like, you know, it's like by the third paragraph, how they're telling you about, you know, the, you know, you can smell the flowers when you walk down the path. You're like, you know, lost and you don't remember what the property is. But I think, you know, putting a little bit of your own voice in there. So if you're funny, just like be funny in your ad, you know, because by the time they talk to you, they're going to be like, oh yeah, this person has a sense of humor, and maybe they're a little sarcastic or whatever. Great, they got to know you there. And so yeah, you can, I think, just try to be yourself, try to speak in your own voice as much as you can. But then the other thing is like, try to really tell as much as you can about the property without being too long-winded. Like really, you know, tell them what they can expect. You know, don't make it so short that they don't understand what it is that they're getting, but don't be too long-winded, right? Like you don't want to bore them to death. Yeah, so starting out, I think just pick a channel, whatever it is, go for free if you don't have a bunch of money, or if you have some money and you want to, you know, just only work with like super qualified leads, go to one of the marketplaces.
So at what point do you think it is the right time to invest and get a website and start to develop more of that online presence that people can go and get to know you better at?
You know, it's still situational. I do think it's probably better that you might have a few properties and you don't have like one or two properties on the site. So I think having a handful of properties, whatever you determine that is, maybe call it five for the sake of this discussion. And then obviously like knowing you're going to stay in the game and keep growing, and you're going to go from 5 to 6 to 7 and 8 and keep growing, like then invest in that, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, right? Because you know, you could jump in and let's say that you were in that demographic profile where you have the W-2 job, you're doing this on the side, you have some cash that you've put aside so that you can actually allocate it towards this business and you want to grow it, it probably still doesn't make sense to just get your website up until you have some properties. And part of that is the optics, right? So you do some advertising, some marketing, and you get somebody to come to your site and you have one property. And that might say to them, man, this is kind of interesting. They only have one property. I wonder why don't they have more properties? I would have felt like, if this is a business, they would have had more of a selection, more options for me to choose from. Or that's just kind of, I think, an expectation maybe that I have. But the perception really goes a long way. So you get to that point to where you build up some inventory, and it doesn't have to be a lot of inventory, like you said. I mean, you could start with 5+ properties where you're ready to sell those, and maybe you've sold a couple properties and you want to put those on the website to show that you've actually sold those transactions, right? But you have more than just one or two, and then coupling that with you've tested the model, you've enjoyed the process, and you want to continue to grow your business, right? I think that that's, from my perspective, the appropriate time for you to really start to look at, okay, I need to get an online presence out there so that I can send people to this site so that they can get to know me a little bit better, more than just the ad. And that also kind of lends itself to, now I've put this marketing in place, people are going to reach out to me. If I just have the ad, then they're going to be sending me an email and they don't have anywhere else to go. And that's a challenge, because when people are looking for land, particularly on a lot of these online marketplaces, they're going to send 4 or 5 emails, right? And we've talked about this before with like speed to lead, but they're going to be sending emails to a bunch of different people. And if they don't have anywhere else to go, that could be a hindrance into you being able to further develop that relationship and get the sale. So if they're able to send you, they reach out to you and then you're responding back to them and you're cultivating that relationship by sending them somewhere else and adding additional value however you can, that's going to help grow your business exponentially much quicker.
Yeah. And I think there's pre-website and post-website marketing, right? So, we can do the pre-website marketing, and that's sort of where you're getting your feet wet, learning the business, focusing on what matters and getting those transactions, like those first few transactions, out of your way. And then post website. So let's say you decide to get the website. I mean, we're obviously big believers in websites, and that's why we developed Acrefy, and we saw it change the game for us. But it wasn't the first thing that we tackled in the business. And so because you can mess around with all sorts of things that are supposed business, but you don't have a business if you're not doing these transactions, which is what we're here to do. So but the website obviously becomes a big player in the grand scheme of things as you start to scale up a little bit. And so post website, now you've got a website, invest in it, make sure that it works well, make sure that it's super fast, make sure that it's ultra mobile optimized, because like 80% of the traffic out there is probably on mobile. And so you've got that now, and now people are coming to the site. And so your post marketing, like what you're going to do now that you have a website, is you're going to have a pixel on your website, so that, just think of a pixel as a little tracking device, for those that aren't familiar with this. But if someone goes to your website, they get tagged with a little tracking device, and then that tracking device tracks them all over the internet. And at any time, an ad can get posted in front of them to try to get them back to your website. So now that you're building traffic to your website, then you can invest in some retargeting ads. And it's really great to do it. This is where you do want to invest some money into paid traffic on Facebook. And to just be clear here, like there's Facebook Marketplace, and that's just free. You just go in and post on Facebook Marketplace. You can post on the Facebook buy, sell, trade groups. Those are free. It's just free posting. I don't know if you can boost in there or anything like that. So maybe you could pay a few bucks to get it boosted, but just think of that as kind of unpaid for the purpose of this podcast. And then there's the paid side of Facebook where you have a business account, you go through, you're going to actually like spend a certain amount of dollars per day on your marketing, and you've got to build these ads. And you can build ads for just properties, or you can build ads that are generic to get people to your site. You can build ads for cold traffic, meaning these people have never been to your site and they haven't been, tagged by you using the pixel, or they have been to your site and then there's retargeting ads. So perfect example is someone shopping around on your website and they've gone down and they've looked at a property in a certain location, and Facebook knows this, and you might have an ad that's specific for that location, Coconino County, Arizona. Okay. Like, all right, if they went to a property in Coconino County, Arizona, and your website put that little tag on them, then you can try to redirect them back. If they're now browsing on Facebook, like, 2 hours later, there could be an ad that says like, hey, are you looking for land in Coconino County, Arizona? And it's got your brand on there. And they're like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to click on that ad and it just shoots them right back to the site. So you're like, creepily chasing them around the internet and getting them back to your site. But it's a huge return on ad spend because they've obviously gone to your site. And if they've gone down that deep down the rabbit hole on your site to go to like a specific property or dig around in a certain area, and you can target them and get them back to your site, it's a huge, huge return, because who knows why they left your site in the first place. Maybe they were about to buy and then the dog barked and then they had to run out and then they forgot all about it, or coffee spilled, or whatever the case may be. And then they just kind of forgot your site for some reason. And then they're back at the land marketplaces digging around again, and they don't remember your name. But if you catch them with the retargeting ads, you can bypass them doing that whole search from scratch and just be right there in front of them right off the bat.
Yep. Yeah. And what's the saying? How many times do you need to be in front of somebody before they actually truly start to recognize your name, your brand?
I think it's like 7 or something like that. I forget. It's the
Yeah.
numbers are
But it's a
somewhere
lot,
around that.
right? I mean, it's not just once or twice, right? So you have to continually try and get in front of them multiple times, 5, 6, 7, 8 times before people really recognize, oh man, I saw those guys before. I remember them. Oh yeah, I went to their website. I saw this piece. And the fact that I'm continually seeing this traffic direct me here, it subconsciously is giving people a little bit more trust, a little bit more confidence that this is legitimate and I can move on to the next stage of where I want to be in my journey.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And then just, so we won't make this too long-winded, like I think there's quantitative and qualitative. Like some of it's about consistency and just being there and marketing consistently. Focus on that first. Don't worry so much about the quality of your ads and everything off the jump. Just focus on being consistent, like getting your ads out there, getting them live, starting to work on that. And then just remember the little things of, just put your logo there and make sure you've got like some of those basics. Then you can start focusing more on like the higher quality ads, whatever that means, for the marketplace that you're on. Then start to focus on the quality much more. But out the gate, just start focusing on like getting reps, get the ad posted. How do you do it? Okay, cool. I don't really like the ad. How do I change the creative side on it? Split test a little bit. Like we split tested. It was amazing when we did the split test. I'll never forget. And I don't know if you can do this on Facebook anymore, but you could see the demographic of the people that were viewing your ads. And we had the really pretty, like picturesque mountain view. And then we had just a straight up aerial with like a rectangle drawn around the property. It was just ugly desert. And then, the actual copy that was on the ad was identical. There was no difference in the copy, but the picture was different. The pretty mountain got like 98% women, no joke. That's what they were like clicking on. And then the other one that we were split testing live was like 98% men. Like men for some reason gravitated towards that, women gravitated towards that, and we got to see that live with the results in Facebook, and it was crazy. And so anyway, you can really like really geek out on marketing too if you want to, and start to hyper tailor some of the ads. And we didn't really talk about this, but but I think it's important to understand who your customers are and how to break them down, so you can call them customer personas or customer avatars. Whatever it is, think about who they are. Like we had Retirement Richard, we gave them all names, right? We had Retirement Richard, we had Investing Isabel, we gave them all names, and there was maybe 10 different personas that we came up with. And then it was like, what is important to that person, right? So Retirement Richard was someone that was 50 years old, maybe 55, gonna retire sometime in the next 10 years, wanted a piece of land that was, an hour or two away from the city, and wanted it to be buildable so that, he could build something on it now while he's still working and then go retire there, right? Whereas like Investing Isabel, if I'm even remembering that right, she was like a savvy investor, um, and then she wanted something that was very clearly going to make her a return. And then the ad spoke to those things, right? Like then the ad for Retirement Richard was, can you imagine seeing yourself here when you're done with your job and you could like finally have a cup of coffee on the porch of the house that you built, blah 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 blah. And then the other ad for the investor, it was totally different. It's like, hey, buy this piece of land because it's in the path of progress. It's growing in value every single, year. The population in these two areas goes up and they're growing together, So
Yeah.
all right, we're gonna keep going, but yeah, go ahead. We're gonna keep going because now we want to talk about realtors a little bit and then we'll wrap it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to wrap up on that last segment there, it can feel a little bit overwhelming when you're sitting there starting at the beginning and saying, man, like I have to create all these different ads and all these different customer avatars. And it doesn't have to be that way. You build this up over time, like you said earlier, right? You just start with an audience and avatar that is going to be interested in buying whatever property that you have, and just start to build out that profile, and then build out some copy that's going to speak to that profile. And then after you get that posted and you posted that ad for a couple of weeks, then build out your next profile and start to do some testing on the same platform and just see how the responses come in, who the audience is, is it what you expected? Is it not what you expected? And then just continue to tweak it, continue to modify it. But you don't need to spend an entire day or an entire week building out 10 different customer avatars and then building out 10 ads for that one property that speak to all those different avatars. That's not the right way to start, in my opinion, right? You want to go through and you just want to take it one step at a time, get it out there, get the reps, do it consistently, and then you're going to generate results.
Yeah, and I think it depends if you're interested in it or not. Like I was super interested in it, so I probably pushed initiatives like that forward earlier in the business than we even really needed to, and and it was super fun. But yeah, right off the bat, just focus on building that consistency muscle. Just keep shooting free throws over and over and over again, and you're going to get better at making free throws. So
Cool. All right, well, let's jump in. So we graduate up, and what is the right time to start using a realtor? What are some of the factors that you consider as to when to use a realtor versus when not to use a realtor?
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times it just comes down to the dollar amount, the value of the property, right? Like a realtor is not going to oftentimes list a property that's worth $10,000, and even sometimes they don't want something that's 20 or $25,000. It's just not enough of a commission for them, so they're just not that motivated. Even maybe they'll take the listing at $25,000, $30,000 or less. There are plenty of realtors that will take listings at that value, but they're not going to prioritize them and maybe give them the attention that they need to get them sold, perhaps. And then also, it's, are you going to offer seller financing on those? And then how do you work that out with the realtor? Like if you sell a property that's $15,000 and the realtor collects, call it, I mean, I think at that price point, a lot of realtors want like 10%. So not to do public math, but that's like $1,500, I think. But what if they seller financed it and the person put down $250 and then just disappeared and you paid out a $1,500 commission? Like it just doesn't add up, right? So we never messed around with realtors at that value because it just didn't pencil, right? And but I think once we moved up the value chain a little bit, it got to be a lot more, I don't know what the word is, but it was just normal to use a realtor. Like it wasn't as common maybe for someone to buy a piece of land that's 50 or $100,000 um, just directly from the seller. You know, it happens for sure, but a realtor is more common at those price points, and a realtor is more motivated at those price points, right? So a realtor is going to take $100,000 listing, and they're going to be happy to list it and get some photos and answer phone calls and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense to start using a realtor at that point. And I think like that's one of the main things is what is the value of the property and is there a good realtor?
Yeah, yeah, that's great advice. So how do you best find a good realtor and know that they're doing a good job in marketing the property for you?
This one took us a while to get, but I think proof of concept first, like show the results first by like we needed to do a lot of research on these real estate agents. We needed to find a real estate agent that, is actually familiar with land and does land deals, right? So we don't run around and just look for realtors that have all house listings. Like you've got to do a bunch of legwork on it. So I think actually what would be nice is we'll wrap this up, but we should do a part two on realtors. But I just want to wrap it up for time's sake because I know you got to go. One of the big things, or to make it really, really simple, you can go to, like Redfin, go down and search your area. You can go down to the bottom, you can export a list. And then if you're good with Excel, you can convert it to an Excel file and then basically like start to look at the numbers and say, um, first go on Redfin and filter for land and then actually export the list. So now you've got realtors that have done land deals on your list. Then you can start to look at how many of these realtors are doing a lot of volume versus they're just doing one land deal, right? That's step one. Then start to like look at the realtors that are doing deals where their name is on both sides. That means they're probably doing pocket listings and they've got deep connections because they're able to like, just sell it in-house almost. And then look for the days on market. If there's a realtor that maybe they have 3 sales, but their average days on market is 180 days. And then there's another realtor that's also got 3 sales and their average days on market is maybe 2 of those sales are like 1 day on the MLS because they had to post it on the MLS per the MLS laws. And that was it. But they really had a pocket buyer lined up. And then their third property they had on the market for 90 days. Like that's probably the realtor that you want to call. Then you want to make sure you call them and get the qualitative side. Like look at their listings, of course, make sure they've got good listings, see if they're willing to do drone photos, call them, see if they answer the phone, and just see if you jive with them, and see if they're knowledgeable and see if they know land. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff on realtors, but different price point, different animal, and realtors can be great. They can be terrible. It just, it's our job to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think two biggest takeaways there are, the filtering process of being able to go into Redfin, using that tool and just getting a list of realtors to see who's doing what, right? So seeing that activity, that's a great place to start. And then the other thing that you said at the end there, pick up the phone and call them and see if they answer the phone, because that's what's going to happen when a buyer calls on one of your listings. Are they actually going to be able to answer the phone? How are they going to answer the phone? Do they sound professional? Are they receptive? Do they sound like they're smiling, warm? Are they knowledgeable? All of that stuff translates directly over into the representation of the property. So you can glean so many insights just from a single phone call. But those two things to get started, I think that's probably a pretty good place to wrap. Unless you got any other parting words of wisdom here.
If they didn't answer the phone, how fast did they call you back, or did they text you right away?
Yeah, yeah.
So no,
Speed,
good
speed
spot
to
to wrap.
lead.
Speed the lead, baby.
Speed to lead, baby. Cool. All right, man. Well, this is fun. We'll come back next time and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about realtors and some strategies that have worked and that have definitely not worked with us. And so we'll look forward to next time.
Sounds good. All right, man. Thanks.